Welcome. Can you believe it? We made it to week 2 of NJCAA All Access. It's Thursday, September 21st, and I'm Zach McKinstry.
I'm Alexa Wesselman, and there was a lot of action across the NJCAA all sports within the last week. Some big shakeups happened, and as temperatures start to cool down outside, the competition's going to start getting hotter, and those implications are going to get more serious.
We saw plenty of that last weekend across all sports, but let's take a look at our junior college football scoreboard. We start in Mississippi on Thursday, where number 13 EMCC answered any doubts after the loss to Copiah Lincoln with a dominant performance against number 4 Jones. Jones took a 20-14 second quarter lead, but following that touchdown, the Lions outscored the Bobcats 33-3 the rest of the way, thanks to a stellar game from Ty Keys. 26 for 41, 342 yards, 4 touchdowns and an interception, 44 yards on the ground. And how about the EMCC defense? 9 sacks as a team, 14 tackles for loss, and 3 takeaways, including a 66-yard scoop and score to close the third quarter and to give Jones its first loss of the year, 47-23. Elsewhere, Mississippi Gulf Coast looks like the real deal, shutting out Itawamba in a 50-0 win at home, and Colin moves to 2-0 with an impressive dub over Mississippi Delta. On Friday, only one game on the Friday schedule, and it's not a typo. Blinn throttled non-NJCAA opponent TWA College 89-6. That offense looking good down there in Texas. As we move to Saturday, some much closer matchups, starting with number 15 Tyler on the road against number 5 Trinity Valley, which was an absolute thriller. Each team tossed 3 interceptions, and points were hard to come by for both usually explosive offenses. Jaden Pete totaled 412 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it was the third phase special teams that made the difference in this game. The Cardinals blocked a field goal, the Apaches blocked a punt, and then on the final drive of the game, Tyler marched down the field and Christian Baxter kicked a 30-yard field goal with zeros on the clock to finish the upset, and Tyler would win 20-17. Not the only upset on Saturday, though, as number 9 Lackawanna fell on the road against Georgia Military College 17-9. One stat that describes that game is the Falcons were held to just 2 for 13 on third down in the 1-possession loss. The Butler Grizzlies also make some noise in the Jayhawk with a 26-20 win over Indy, which included more good special teams with 3 blocked kicks in that one, and more on that to come in our JUCO Gym segment. Moving on Saturday, how about the number 3 Kilgore and number 10 New Mexico military contest last week? It ain't easy to walk into the Wool Bowl and exit with a sizable win, but that's exactly what the Rangers did, sporting what might be the best offense in JUCO football this year. Kilgore is now averaging 48.3 points a game through their first 3 games, starting 3-0 for the first time since pre-COVID. The turning point in this one was in the second quarter. The tie game saw Nimi marching down the field into the red zone with QB Kobe Muasau, but a 95-yard pick six flipped the script and would set up Kilgore for a monster second half, outscoring New Mexico Military 20-2 en route to the 48-23 victory. Number 2 Iowa Western's defense dominated Highland to the tune of -3 rushing yards, but the game was tight in the end, and the Reavers staved off a comeback in a 21-16 win. And number 6 Iowa Central and Navarro coasted to big outings to close out the D1 slate. In the D3 slate, a couple of huge D3 games last weekend, including a potential national championship preview. Number 1 DuPage and number 2 North Dakota SCS. The Chaparrals won a slugfest thanks to a big day on the ground for Jaden McGill, who finished 18 for 110 and 2 TDs. And the 2022 D3 Defensive Player of the Year and All-American Guy Goss had 15 total tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Nassau upset number 5 Hudson Valley in our ESPN Plus Game of the Week in a defensive masterpiece. Neither team had 260 total yards, but a fourth quarter touchdown was the difference, and the Lions would win 13-6. And lastly, number 3 Rochester CTC handed the other number 5 Minnesota North Mesabi Range a 37-21 loss. And those were the games from this last week. And now let's take a sneak peek at the games coming up starting today with Alexa.
All right, let's get into some of the top matchups coming up in the next week. And there are some big ones with some top-ranked teams that are looking to continue their streaks. Let's jump right into it with number 10 Colin versus number 12 Jones. Now, this is a game for status. Colin looking to keep theirs, Jones looking to regain some of it. This is the first time this season Colin is ranked after 2 straight wins and a dominating performance over Mississippi Delta last week. Devon Tott completed 13 of 21 pass attempts for 226 yards and 3 touchdowns. Running back Johnny Daniels also moved into the 5th-ranked spot in the nation for rushing yards per game. Jones unfortunately dropped from number 4 last week after a big loss to East Mississippi. It seemed like they just lost momentum, so they're looking to gain some of that back. Moving on to a D1-D3 matchup between number 4 Iowa Central and number 1 DuPage. Iowa Central looking to improve their record with another W. They only have 1 loss this season, and that came to number 1 ranked school in the country, Hutchinson. Wide receiver Mario Sanders, he leads the country in 3 categories for the Tritons: receptions, yards, and yards per game. He's also ranked 2nd nationwide for touchdowns. Now, DuPage is also wanting to add a big W to their record and keep their undefeated status to go on to defend their national championship title. Moving on to women's soccer, we've got another interdivision matchup, D1 and D2, number 11 Arizona Western versus number 1 Phoenix. The Lady Matadors moved up the rankings this week after 2 conference wins. Forward Ashley Martinez leads the nation in goals and currently sits 2nd in points scored. And Phoenix continues to dominate the Division II standings. They're currently undefeated, and the most points any opponent they've faced have scored is 1 point. Phoenix College is also having a moment in soccer. Their women's team is obviously ranked number 1, but their men's team is ranked number 2 this week as well. Speaking of men's soccer, let's look at the D1 matchup between number 5 Cowley and number 6 Iowa Western. Both of these teams are wanting to bounce back. Cowley coming off their first loss of this season to Barton, and they face an Iowa Western team looking to gain a little bit of ground after a loss to Indian Hills last week. Moving on to D1 volleyball, number 3 New Mexico versus number 6 Odessa. This is a very good matchup and a little bit of a hometown rivalry as they're only about an hour and a half from each other. New Mexico has good momentum on their side early in the season, and so does Odessa. They dropped a little bit in the rankings after a loss to New Mexico Military. All right, those are some of the biggest games happening, and now we're going to send it over to Zach and our favorite guest star, Aaron Arnold. They're going to get into some of the hottest topics across JUCO football.
Thanks, Alexa. We are blessed with the presence of Aaron Arnold, our NJCAA football insider, and let's just get right into it. We start with Texas JUCO football, who had a stellar weekend. Blendon Navarro had blowout victories. That Tyler and Trinity Valley game was just as good as advertised. And then it was Kilgore, number 3 in the country, dominating number 10 New Mexico Military. I say all that to mention that there is so much talent in the Southwest this year. A few weeks into the season, how do you see this conference panning out?
I like the Texas League. I think they've got a couple of really good teams down there. To me, the team that probably stands out as being the front runner is Kilgore. I think the NJCAA has them ranked number 3, and to me, that's spot on. I like that ranking for them. They are playing great football. From what we've seen so far, they seem to be pretty legit. It's a huge win over New Mexico Military. Offensively, they're averaging almost 50 points a game, and I think what makes them really tough is they're doing that with a very balanced attack. They are running the football very well. They are throwing the football very well. They are a handful. They may be the toughest offense in the country right now to stop. And then they're only giving up 65 yards on the ground every week, so you really aren't able to get much going in the run game against them, and that's a tough combination. And I think that they're in the driver's seat to me right now in the Texas League. They do have some tough games ahead. They host Navarro this week, which I think, looks like a game they should win. But to me, the interesting game is in 2 weeks when they go to Cisco. Cisco's game was canceled this week, and so now they've got 2 weeks. They're essentially coming off a bye going into that game. And coming off that bye week is such a huge advantage that, Cisco's got 2 weeks to recover. They've got extra time to prepare. They've got extra time to scout. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be at Kilgore's game, watching this week, getting, in-person information that they're going to gather as they get to sit there. And it's a big advantage for Cisco. So I think, in 2 weeks, if Kilgore comes out of that game 5-0, we're going to know a lot more that to me confirms that they deserve to be where they're at in that number 3 ranking.
Yeah, Kilgore 3-0 for the first time since pre-COVID, and doing so with 49 points in the first game, 48 in the second, and 48 in the third. That offense is really good. But moving east to Mississippi, there are about 4 or 5 legitimate contenders in Mississippi right now. And when you look at the star power in that EMCC and Jones matchup last weekend and the way that Mississippi Gulf Coast has played over the last 2 weeks, how would you describe where this Mississippi JUCO conference is at right now?
It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be a pretty wild race to the finish. I think you're right. I think there are 4, maybe 5 teams that really have a chance to come out on top of that league. And to me, whoever wins that league deserves to have a playoff spot. I mean, it's a tough league. And if you end up with the championship trophy from the Mississippi League, you need to be in the top 4. I like in the Southern Division, I think right now Gulf Coast and Colin, to me, are the 2 best teams in that division. Gulf Coast is second in the country right now. They're scoring 50 points a game. I don't know how these guys find a way to score 50 points every week. It's amazing to me. They're 6th in rushing yards allowed. They've got a big win over Northwest, a nice win over Itawamba. Their resume is impressive. I like Colin. They're not quite as high on the rankings because they were coming from a little bit lower, but they shocked some people with that East Mississippi win. They're throwing the ball for 300 a week. They're rushing it for 160. I think Colin's a handful, and I can see either of those 2 teams coming out on top in that Southern Division. The Northern Division, kind of an easier pick there. I think East Mississippi is the front runner. I like what they do. It's easy to pick East Mississippi because they're good every year, but I really do think they've got it going this year. And then, of course, you can't sleep on Northwest Mississippi. They're a team that can beat anybody. And then back in the Southern Division, you've got Jones College, who's the 12th ranked team in the country right now. So that's going to be a fun one to watch and see. If I had to pick right now, I'd have to probably say Gulf Coast is the leader for that league, but anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, Gulf Coast had Jay Dupree, who went for 4 touchdowns in their win to start the season over Northwest. And then they got stars everywhere. Ty Keys for EMCC has been really good. But you mentioned Colin. That's a good segue into the rankings. Top 15, a couple of teams drop out. It was Lackawanna and New Mexico Military drop out of the rankings. And Colin jumps all the way to 10 in their first ranking of the season. So what caught your eye about the top 15 this week?
I think when you're looking at the NJCAA rankings, you've got to be aware of the fact that we're putting together the playoffs with those rankings. So spots 1 through 4 are paramount. Spots 5 through 8 are equally important, and then beyond that, it's nice and it's fun. But those are the spots that I think we got to make sure we get right. I love number 1, Hutchinson. I think they're playing the best ball in the country right now. They deserve to be number 1. I also love number 2, Iowa Western. They're the defending national champs. We're going to get to see those 2 teams play each other. So who is 1 and who is 2, that's going to get sorted out on the field. I already said Kilgore at the 3 spot. I really like them. I actually bumped up Mississippi Gulf Coast into the 4 spot. I like Iowa Central. I think they're a great football team. I've battled it out with Coach Montalto dozens of times. He's a great coach. But if I'm Gulf Coast and I'm an undefeated team in the Mississippi League, I don't think I would be wrong to have a gripe being ranked behind a 1-loss Iowa team. So I would move Mississippi up to 4, put Iowa back down at 5. And then I also moved East Mississippi and Colin up to 6 and 7, which meant I bumped Snow down. And I think Snow's a good football team. I just haven't seen enough out of them yet to have them ranked quite so high. But again, Snow, they've got a couple crossover games in the Iowa Jayhawk League. We're going to find out what we need to find out about Snow College 2 this year.
Yep, a lot of talent. Thanks for your time, Aaron. Appreciate your insight as always. And once again, we'll see you here next week.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks as always, guys. Coming up, we're going to get into rankings, and there were some pretty big changes over the last week, so stay tuned.
Great seats at a great price. Get them safer, simpler, and smarter with TicketSmarter. A proud partner to the biggest names in live sports and events, including ESPN events and iHeartRadio. TicketSmarter has seats for over 125,000 live events and 48 million tickets for sale. All backed with the TicketSmarter 100% ticket guarantee. Thinking about your next great live event? Think smarter. Think TicketSmarter. Get your tickets your way, guaranteed, at TicketSmarter.com.
Welcome back to NJCAA All Access. All right, we're going to get into some rankings, and obviously Zach and Aaron talked about the Division I football rankings already, so we're just going to start with D3 and jump right into it. Nothing has changed. The D3 rankings for football are absolutely the same, with College of DuPage coming in at that top spot. Looking at Division I men's soccer rankings, some movement in the top 5. Cowley was ranked number 3 last week, as we previously discussed in the top matchups coming up, which allowed Salt Lake to move into the number 3 spot. Division II men's soccer, a pretty big change, with number 1 Phoenix College last week now coming in at number 2, and Northeast Community College taking over the top spot in Division II. In D3 men's soccer, a little movement in and out of the top 5. Number 4 last week, Suffolk moved down to number 6, and Nassau Community College moved up into the 4 position. Division I women's soccer, same story, a little bit of movement in and out of the top 5. Eastern Florida State was number 3 last week. They're number 5 this week, which allowed Seminole State to move into that 3rd spot. D2 women's soccer, you have to go all the way down to 9th and 10th to see any movement on the leaderboard, with St. Charles Community College last week being number 9. They are now number 10, and Johnson County Community College coming in at number 9. Division III women's soccer, the only movement is pretty far down on the leaderboard, swapping number 7 last week, Jefferson, and number 8 last week, Joliet Junior College. They swapped, so Joliet is now number 7. Moving into volleyball and looking at D1, some movement in the 4th, 5th, and 6th positions. Number 4 Odessa College last week moved down to number 6. Navarro moved into 4th, and Northeastern Junior College rounding out the top 5. Division II volleyball, some major movement in the rankings. Number 3 last week, Gulf Coast State College. They moved down to number 9th, and Heartland was able to move into the top 5 after being ranked 7th last week. And finally, in Division III volleyball, some big movement. Number 5 last week, Sandhills moved down to 8th, and that made way for Dallas College Brookhaven to move into the top 5. And look at number 6, Caldwell Community College. They were 13th last week. They are now ranked 6th. All right, that does it for this week's rankings. Now let's send it over to Zach, who's going to spotlight some other big performances.
Plenty of JUCO alums shined at the next level this week as we spotlight some of those performances with our NJCAA to NCAA connection. It starts with Vanya Prey-Schul, who had 893 career kills in her junior college career with Eastern Wyoming and the Butler Grizzlies. She's killing it at the NCAA level with Division II UNC Pembroke. After winning Conference Carolina's tournament MVP last year, the Serbian outside hitter has picked up where she left off, tallying 32 kills in a match against Lenore Ryan last week and earning Conference Player of the Week. Also, Northwest Mississippi football grad Sam Brumfield is tearing it up at his new home, Middle Tennessee State, where he won Defensive Player of the Week for Conference USA this week, tallying 13 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, a sack, a forced fumble for his second straight game, and the Blue Raiders would win over Murray State. One more quick commercial break, but when we come back, it is junior college gyms on the other side. Plenty of eye-popping plays this week, so be sure to stay tuned.
Intensity fuels these champion student athletes to greatness. Zurich Insurance is proud to be the official provider of student athlete insurance for the National Junior College Athletic Association. Throughout the highs, we cheer along to their screams of victory. Throughout the lows, we support them through their tears of defeat. Zurich Insurance, helping student athletes play the sport they love.
The future is threatened by enemies often unseen and unexpected. In the midst of an uncertain and evolving world, the need for Marines to defeat these shifting threats is critical, because the need to ensure stability for our nation has never been greater. When there are battles to win for America's future, there is one constant: Marines.
Welcome back. We had plenty of plays to choose from this week, lots of submissions. But these are the 5 we selected for this week's Junior College Gyms. A lot of football on the way, but we start with Division I women's soccer. It's Arizona Western and Eastern Arizona, and how about this strike from Sienna Thomas? Well outside the 18 and tucks it where Mama hides the cookies. Top shelf. And the Matadors beat the Gila Monsters 6-0. Moving to football, we go to Butler for maybe the most absurd story in sports right now. This block by Ashton Levels and return by Caden White for 99 yards is the 3rd straight game Butler has blocked an extra point and returned it for 2. Oh yeah, they also blocked 2 field goals in this game and went on to beat rival Indy 26-20. That is absolutely unheard of, and it's a rare occurrence, so for it to happen 3 straight times is nuts for the Grizzlies. We move to EMCC. Blink and you'll miss this one-handed snag by Cam Wright in the back of the end zone to help East Mississippi pull off this ranked upset against Jones. Look at that, tight coverage, and somehow pulled that in, got a foot in, and EMCC would win. Shout out to Twin Sports TV for sending in this one. It is Laquan Robinson laying the boom on the quarterback for East Central in a 24-17 win. What do they put in the water in Mississippi? That is absolutely smoked. And Laquan Robinson and Holmes are 2-0 to start the season. Lastly, we move to Northeast Mississippi. Staying in Mississippi is the theme this week. And how about Kylan Vaughn? Right foot, left foot levitating, somehow keeping a foot in bounds and reeling in this highlight catch. Might see that one on You Got Moss next week. Just stellar stuff from Vaughn and Northeast Mississippi to round out our junior college gyms.
A lot of football in the top plays this week, which is fantastic. And we want to thank everybody who sent us some top plays. Keep sending them. We want to put the best from the NJCAA every week up here.
Yep, at NJCAA Network on Twitter and on Facebook. And that's all we got for you today on NJCAA All Access. So thanks for tuning in. Busy weekend in the NJCAA, so be sure to check out those games. And we'll see you back here next Thursday.